So, I've noticed with a lot of the videos I've recently been making, I would come up with a script, right? And it would come out kind of a natural and stilted. So I'm trying out this new thing where I'm just gonna try to talk off the top of my head. And admittedly, I'm not a good public speaker. I'm not really a smart guy by any means, and I'm hoping part of the reason I made this YouTube channel was so I could just get better at speaking naturally. And reading from a script wasn't working out. So whoever's watching, all three of you, I hope you can bear that in mind as you're watching. That this is just going to be off the top of my head, and really what I want from these videos is just like a conversation about books I've recently read. I know my channel has the term book review, but I'm not really reviewing books. It's more just me talking about a book that I recently read, kind of like a book club. I more so imagine it like if a coworker or a friend asked me what have I been reading recently, or if I met someone at the bus stop and they were like, "Oh, have you read anything?" I'd be like, "Oh yeah," and then I would just kind of give a little summation or condensed speech about something I've read. So it's very conversational, nothing serious. I'm not a reviewer. I'm not really qualified in any sense to really review other people's works, and I don't mean to say that in like a douchey way. It's just not. I'm not here to judge someone's writing necessarily. Like, I'm not going to do a deep dive. This is not an essay. This is not anything academic. So with that in mind, I don't want to keep boring you on those little things. I'm just going to, stream of conscious, just go off the top of my head about the Cossacks by Leo Tolstoy. This is a short 160-page novella. Novella just means it's a short story. I don't remember if it was Leo Tolstoy's first work, but I think it was at least his first notable work. Written in the late 19th century. It's actually probably my favorite book ever, or it's tied with Brothers Karamazov. But two different beasts. The Cossacks is again a short story. Just for a little context, and again, this is just like very shallow, like something I just read off Wikipedia and some other websites, but just to give some context, Leo Tolstoy, again, is a Russian writer, right in the late 19th century. He comes from an aristocratic family, so he's wealthy, and he's sort of, as a young man, lived like a dissolute life. He enjoys gambling, drinking, women, and he sort of gets disenchanted with that lifestyle, and he wants to change, so he joins the army. And this is kind of how he wrote the Cossacks, because the main character, his name is Olenin. He has pretty much the same story, and so in a sense, one might be able to say that the Cossacks is semi-autobiographical. So this is where we'll start. The Cossacks. So Olenin is the main character. He is a young Russian man, aristocratic, has a lot of serfs, or like slaves, servants, doesn't really have to work in his life. He very much enjoys gambling, hanging out with his friends. He loves womanizing, but he's grown sick of it. He wants to find more meaning in his life. He wants to find something better. He's tired of like this affected lifestyle that he's so used to with the Russian gentry that he occupies himself with. You can kind of just imagine like a metropolitan or cosmopolitan, like wealthy people like today, like I don't know, you can just imagine like that ilk of people having just terrible conversations with each other, and very shallow, superficial, like, oh, this person's wearing that, oh my gosh, or like, oh, like, he's Jonathan sold his business for how much? stuff like that. Like you can imagine these kinds of conversations, and Olenin is just tired of it all, and he wants more meaning in his life. So he decides to join the army, and he gets sent to the Caucasus Mountains, which is a mountain range, like south of Russia, and here he hopes he's gonna find like a simpler lifestyle. I mean, he hopes he'll find more meaning to his life. So that's how the story, literally the first chapter, this is how it starts off the bat. Olenin was with his friends. They were all gambling. They pulled an all-nighter before he leaves and to say goodbye. And an interesting note is that, like, at the very beginning, his friend is really sad that Olenin is leaving. But Olenin, he kind of has like this like nonchalant sort of like I don't really care personality, right? Like his friend is more sad that he's leaving than Olenin is. Well, Olenin is also really excited too, but Olenin mentions that he sort of alludes to that he's kind of tired of just jumping from pleasure to pleasure. He's going from A to B to C. He's just kind of consuming, and he's aware of his own consumption, and that's part of the reason why he's leaving. Because his friend even mentions, like, you've fallen in love with these girls, and you sort of just discard them so easily. And Olenin, he straight up just says, like, yeah, like, I fall in love a lot, but like I also get bored real easily. And part of Olenin's distress is that lack of stability or like sense of like I don't want to say maybe self-worth, or like he's just not grounded in who he is or his life at the moment, and hence he just wants this adventure. He wants to go to the wilderness, and I suppose that's a very common like guy thing, especially in like early adulthood, like early 20s, mid 20s or something, like that desire to sort of escape your town, your city, and just to jump into a brand new life. And that's what Olenin's gonna do. And he's a bit of a romantic guy. Like even this notion of like going to the Caucasus Mountains and being sort of like a savage, or per se, like not quite a savage, but like more rural. He's got that idea himself from books he's read. And so he has a very romantic picture of what he's expecting. But that's what he's going to do, and that's what the story is about. And off he goes to the Caucasus Mountains. He's going to be quartered in a small village with a group of people called the Grevin Cossacks. The Grevin Cossacks are a small group of schismatic Russian Orthodox who opposed a certain patriarch's like rulings or mandates. So essentially they split off from the Russian Orthodox church and started their own community. So they were kind of like, I don't know if they were banished or like self-banished, but they also, the Grevin Cossacks just didn't want to do with like the Russians. They wanted to maintain their old faith, and they're even called the Old Believers. And they went really south to the Caucasus Mountains, where they settled there and sort of started their own community. And really interesting about the Grevin Cossacks is that they're really close to like these Muslim communities, these Muslim tribes that hang around in that area. Like I don't know how to say it, but if they're the Tartars, they live nearby, and they all sort of have this interesting lifestyle where they're all like warring enemy tribes, but they also communicate with each other. They often trade with each other. There's like this very interesting way of life that the Grevin Cossacks have, because they're so intertwined with nature and the surrounding people, yet they're kind of enemies, and they often kill each other. Yeah, but that's a side note. Another thing right off the bat is about Tolstoy's writing is how beautiful he describes nature, how brilliant, honestly, a lot of his writing is just at the very beginning, once Olenin reaches the Caucasus Mountains. Just like the sheer beauty that Tolstoy is able to convey is yeah, nothing short of brilliant. It's just it's fun to read. It's cozy. It's just very, it makes for good reading. Um, so that's one thing that I liked about the Cossacks. It's very pretty writing at times, and of course I'll talk more about other stuff that I like about his writing too. But Tolstoy just does a very good job of describing nature and environments, and he does it in a way that's not corny. It's very just like natural, kind of pure, wholesome. Yeah. And what's great is that he does it so succinctly. Is that a word? Like he does it with such short amount of words that he doesn't have to write crazy amount. He can do it within a paragraph or two. So really cool, and beautiful. So yeah, Olenin gets to the village where he's going to be stationed, and again he comes with his serf. So he has money and he's able to spend a lot of his money freely. So he does have that advantage in the village. So he's going to be quartered in this woman's house who has a daughter. Her name is Maryanka. She's going to be Olenin's love interest and one of the main characters of the novel. So immediately Olenin kind of has this huge crush on Maryanka. Beautiful woman. She's very pure and wholesome. She already off the bat is different from like Russian, like haughty like uptight girls. She's just very innocent and behaves I guess behaves in a very pleasing way to Olenin. And at first this is just like a little crush. He at first it's he's just like, oh, like she's very beautiful and whatnot, and he's more excited just to be in the Caucasus Mountains, which is just like a beautiful area to be in. There's rivers, forests, the Russian steppes are nearby. It's just exuding like this raw primal energy onto Olenin, which that's what he really came for, right? And his plan now is just to assimilate. Like he just wants to fully dive in and immerse himself into that community, into that lifestyle, and he does that. And he does that with good manners. Like although he's aristocrat, he has good manners and he's kind of a gentle guy. He's more moderate than other Russians because it's noted that the Cossacks really don't like most Russians. There's an enmity between them. The Cossacks think Russians are kind of like these uncouth, like they think they're barbaric, like they just don't act right. They're sort of like whenever the Russians come into their village, they're really rude. They think they own the place. They smoke in everyone's houses, kind of like litter, and I don't know, like they're not pleasant to be around. But Olenin is kind of like a little bit different. He's a little more well-mannered, and he really wants to assimilate with the Cossacks, and he does that. So he really throws himself in there, tries to meet everybody. He loves like hearing the stories of people, and he meets this character named Uncle Aroshka. Uncle Aroshka is going to be a larger-than-life character, probably my favorite character in the whole book. Like he's definitely a highlight. Something that Tolstoy is wonderful at too is just creating these characters that are definitely real people. Like reading, just even like reading about Aroshka is like, that this guy is a real person. Like he's not made up. I mean, of course he very well maybe, but what I mean is like his character just comes to life. Like this is a real person you can imagine in the village. Like, and Tolstoy does a wonderful job at that. Like it never seems like, oh yeah, this is like a made up character. Like it really feels very realistic. And Aroshka is like this old hunter, like Cossack. Like he was born and raised there. He's a native. He's I don't want to say patriotic, but like or nationalist, but it's just very proud of being a Cossack, and he lives and breathes the Cossack life, right? Because all he does is hunt, come back home, gets drunk every night off their their chikhir wine, or however you say it, and that's it. Like the cycle continues. I think it was mentioned that he had a wife, and something tragic may have happened, so he sort of just lives on his own, and the village sees him as kind of like this like drunk but like overall cool guy. He can be kind of weird sometimes. Like he could be a little much, but overall he's a decent fella, and Roshka takes a liking to Olenin, and they bond together, and they both go hunting. Olenin enjoys hunting. It's hunting in the Caucasus Mountains and forests where Olenin truly feels alive for the first time in a very long time. He has sort of this revelation while he's out there lost in the woods, like being out in again in that raw primal setting. It just awakens something in him, and he has this revelation that like life is all about like being one with nature, and trying to be as generous as possible to everyone, being kind, and it really has a profound effect on him. Nature has a really profound effect on him, and when he goes back to the village, weeks, months pass. He just gets more intertwined, and he falls in love with all the characters, falls in love with the lifestyle. One of the like the what do you say, like I guess one of the bad things, or not the bad things, conflicts. One of the conflicts is that, so he has that crush on Marianka, but Marianka is set to marry this young gentleman named Lukashka. So Lukashka is the pride of the village. He's this young, handsome, go-getter, like skilled hunter. He's very charismatic. He's a natural-born leader. He's the Chad of the village. Guys want to be him, girls want to be with him. He's a very charming dude, and he's a good guy. Like overall, he seems like a good guy. Even like reading about him, it's really cool that Tolstoy gives Lukashka like a few chapters, sort of just highlighting his character, his personality, and he's just very virile. He's like a very virile guy, and he's wholesome too. Like he also lives and breathes being a Cossack. Like he just goes out hunting. He brings back whatever spoils. He loves going off into like where the warring clans live. He loves talking to them. He loves like exchanging cultures with like even the Muslims and these other nomadic tribes that live in the area. Like he's very he's like a social creature to the max. And some of the best chapters in the whole story are when Lukashka was out on a post, like doing his job as like a watchman, and he ends up murdering an enemy scout who was trying to ambush them or get some information. Those chapters are super exciting, really fun to read, and just gave you a glimpse of Lukashka and like how he's kind of, in a way, it sort of showed like Lukashka entering like manhood in a way, like it's not explicit, but it's just like Lukashka really became like the village Chad in these moments when he killed the enemy, and he came back and everyone sort of like loved him and was really proud of him. But again, he's set to marry Marianka. And then another conflict is like the more that Olenin sees Marianka, the more he falls in love with her, and it becomes sort of like a love triangle. And Marianka's not really interested in Olenin. She's busy doing her own thing. She works. And another interesting thing too, this is kind of fascinating, was that the women in this village are really robust characters. Like they don't just stay at home like twiddling their fingers or like knitting. Like they're out in the fields. They work a ton. They're hardy. They're strong. Tolstoy, when he's writing, like he mentions how like these women have just like this physical robust quality to them, and they have like strong mental characters because they do so much work. They're out in the fields. They milk the cows. You know, they do everything. They're like awesome people. And I don't mean that. I'm not saying that from like a feminist perspective. It's just super interesting that like, again, this is a side note. Again, just very conversational. Interesting how like a lot of like trad people today just envision like their wife or like the role of a mother just being very enclosed, and it's like you see these traditional people who are also very religious, very Christian, despite being they're schismatics of schismatics. Nonetheless, like they worked a ton, you know, like the women, they did a lot. So it's just fascinating stuff to read about. Kind of gives you a little more appreciation for them in a non like cringe way. That was a side note, but yeah, Olenin is falling more in love with Maryanka, and he has this dilemma of like he's kind of like cool. He's cool with Lukashka. They don't really have beef. Olenin even gifted him a horse, which Lukashka was like very much indebted to him for it. Like he was like, you know, it was very unnecessary. It was just part of that random generosity that Olenin was feeling. So yeah, there's that dilemma, a little love triangle going on. And then as the story progresses, Maryanka and Olenin, they get closer and closer. And of course they live in the same house. They tend to see each other pretty often. Olenin doesn't really work, that's like per se, so he's sort of just out there doing his own thing, and he tends to see her a lot. And you know, one of the magical moments in the story was when Olenin met Maryanka in the field, and they brushed each other's hands, and there was just like this really warm, intimate moment, very very beautifully written. And of course the subject matter is kind of, you know, it's not kosher per se, because he knows that she's kind of set to engage this other man, but like it is a really like cute moment. And the way Tolstoy writes these romantic encounters is very charming. And in a way you kind of root for Olenin just like a little bit, because I don't know, you're just kind of rooting for him. Olenin overall seems like a good guy, right? Like it doesn't seem like he has bad intentions, although of course naturally he should not be trying to court this woman who's about to get married. And so yeah, he falls more in love with Maryanka, and Maryanka's not she's giving him some crumbs, you know, she keeps leading him on. And eventually Olenin has had enough. He wants to marry her, and you know, he meets her at parties. They kind of have like these little trysts, these little dalliances, and finally he's had it. He wants to propose to her. He's gonna do it. He writes this long letter, just totally revoking or like abrogating everything he ever said about his first revelation. Like he's like scratched that the real meaning of life is love. Like he's like, I love Maryanka, like I need to have her, and you know, these feelings of like lust and love just overcome him. And kind of shows you how malleable Olenin is. Like from the very beginning we saw that foreshadowing. Like he really jumps from A to B to C. He's not very stable. He's kind of like, you know, like a bag in the wind. Just wherever the wind takes him, that's where he's gonna go. And we kind of see that now, because now he's changed his whole mind. Now he just wants Maryanka. He wants to be a Cossack so bad. Like he wants to like permanently leave Russia and like live in this village, have a family, and just live that life forever. But unfortunately, things go pretty sour. Lukashka and Olenin, they both get sent, or I don't remember how it goes. Basically, there's like one of like the warring Muslim tribes is having like a little skirmish, and the Cossacks require assistance. So Lukashka and Olenin, you know, both head over there, and you know, the Cossacks win. They defeat the little enemy tribe that was right there. A little battle, but unfortunately Lukashka is mortally wounded, right? And they don't know if he's gonna live or not. And this devastates Maryanka. Maryanka is crushed, and ironically, Olenin's like perfect timing to ask her for hand in marriage, because I think Lukashka's gonna die. Like, he's hurt really bad. So let me go ask Maryanka for her hand in marriage. And so he does it, or he goes up to her, and this is like kind of like, it's like a strange part of the story, because this is actually at the very end, but like Maryanka just suddenly changes her whole perspective. Like, she's crying, she's so sad about Lukashka, and she can't marry Olenin. She can't. Like, she's a Cossack, right? Born and bred. She's gonna marry a Cossack. Like, that's just how it is. Like, it's so intrinsic to her, like, her being. Like, she's not gonna marry this Russian guy, and she loves Lukashka so much, and she's devastated that he's essentially on his deathbed. And this is the part where, again, Olenin has another revelation. Like Maryanka's rejection totally breaks him, and he sort of realizes, wait, I'm not a Cossack. Like, this whole time I've been LARPing. If you don't know what LARPing is, it just means like pretending. But like, he's been LARPing as a Cossack for like 6 to 12 months, and he's dived into the culture. He does everything. He lives that life, but he deep down inside also can't shake it off that he's a Russian. Like, he doesn't really belong there. And then Maryanka's rejection was just a cherry on top. It really finished him. And so he ends up leaving. He ends up going back home to Russia with his tail between his legs, and he's kind of defeated. He's dejected. He's had all these grandiose ideas about living with Maryanka and getting married and stuff, and they've been completely vanquished, right? And that's just how the story ends. Olenin says goodbye to everyone, and he just heads home. Again, sad and defeated, knowing that he will never be a Cossack. It's not in his cards. It's not in his like blood. It's not in his DNA. And so I think that's one of like the main themes of the Cossacks, is that Olenin, as much as he wanted to assimilate and be a Cossack, he could never be a Cossack. Like, it's just simply not. It's almost not possible. He doesn't belong there. Like, the whole time he would have just been pretending, because these people in the village have been living there for, I don't know, a long time, decades or centuries. Like, they're very well established. They have their cultures. Their being is there in that village. And he's a pilgrim. He's just a wandering Russian nomad. He himself, he has no bearing. He has no stability in who he is. So he kind of goes home again, defeated. He says bye to Roshka, and even though Roshka has been his best friend for as long as he's been living there, he's sort of like Olenin's kind of mean about it. He just says goodbye while Eroshka's crying. Eroshka's like, hey, I'm gonna miss you, like, and Olenin, he's too nonchalant. He's too, I don't know. I don't think proud is the right word, but like, he's not quite heartless. Like, he has a heart, but I guess he just doesn't take defeat well. And since he doesn't really have that stability in himself, it leaches on. It leaches into like his interactions with people. So in a way, most of his interactions were transactional. Like, he wanted something from someone, and when they don't offer that anymore, he's on to the next thing. So yeah, I think for sure that's one of the main themes of just like being alienated. And because when he goes back home to Russia, he's gonna feel the same thing. He's gonna feel alienated in Russia, because that's why he left. And now that he feels alienated from the Cossacks, it's like, where does he go from here now? Like, so for sure, there's a lot of stuff to sort of think about, to ruminate, to chew over. What else? guess that's it. Kind of a side note, but I was also just reading the story. I kind of really got the, like, it's never mentioned, but I got the vibe that a lot of these problems were happening in context of like the greater problem in Russia, which was, again, I literally don't know like Russian history or anything, but you know, this is the late 19th century. Russia's getting reformed. Like, I know they don't have like the czar anymore. They're ending serfdom. Things are really changing. Russia's been really affected by like French Enlightenment type thinking, and they're becoming more secular. They have like this loss of that orthodoxy that they used to have, and so I think in the context of like Tolstoy and this time, there's just like this overwhelming loss of self, and you could see that in a lot of the writing in that time, like Dostoevsky and Lermontov. Especially like Lermontov's like a hero of our time. Like Olenin is essentially like the hero of our time too. Like he's just like that's who people look up to, is sort of like this wandering, like manly, but not really not manly in the true sense. But you know, that character who's really admired is like the cowboy in the Western, although in reality that's really not much to look up to. Like it's not really manly to be like a wandering nomad forever. At least when you think about, like, you know, if you're gonna start a family and, you know, think about like your ultimate end and whatnot. And someone like Olenin, who doesn't have like that teleological view of himself, like he doesn't know where he's gonna be. He doesn't really know what his life is about, because it's never alluded that he's religious, and I assume reading it he's not. He's not really religious, and so I think this loss is really shown in Olenin. Again, it's not alluded to or implied. It's just a thought that I have reading it, that like I wonder, you know, obviously, like when I read books, I'm not sure how to think about it, because sometimes I'm like, well, what would be the solution, you know, to Olenin? And of course it would be, well, to be religious, because he doesn't have that ultimate end in mind, and he feels like a pilgrim in the wrong sense, and he's gonna keep going on his life, filling it with pleasures, with sensations, with like the next thrill, the next whatever it is. So just some interesting thoughts I had, I think. Because Maryanka and the Cossacks were deeply religious, you know, and they sort of lived that life, and I don't think it was purely because they lived in nature. I think that helped, you know. It's not like they were fully savages, right? Like, you know, but like I think they really lived better because they all had like a set of beliefs, and they all had a common goal in mind, whereas Olenin in like a cosmopolitan Russia, they don't have that anymore. Like they're just secular, like pleasure-seeking dirtbags, right? Who care about like the balls. They care about balls and like sweets, and you know, they're like gluttons and whatnot, just spending money left and right. But yeah, interesting stuff overall. Though again, not to be all so grim, but it's still a wonderful story from the beginning to end. Again, one of my favorite short stories, one of my favorite stories of all time. Highly recommend it. Again, yeah, I have nothing else to say. But thanks for listening. I hope this was a little more conversational in my other videos. If you have any, I don't know, if you have anything to say, like feel free to let me know. Peace.